Let's take a look at my 1951 set of Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension drums. It's not a historical recount because I'm not a drum historian. I'm just getting them ready to sell. But I will add the idea originally came from George Way when he was with the Leedy Drum Company, and then later when the two companies amalgamated, Cecil Stroop collaborated with him to develop the ideas further. And for the rest of the introduction to the drums, you can Google that. But like them or not, these drums were truly revolutionary. They weren't a financial success, but they were revolutionary just the same. And there's a great deal of information and personal opinions by the authors of that information online. Most of them are brutally critical. The Edsel of the drum industry, a design disaster, and a huge embarrassment are just a few comments. My favorite is, they had dubious notoriety. Anyway, there's certainly evidence to show these drums were discontinued amidst the financial troubles accumulated by GC Conn, the parent company. Most of the stories about knob tension drums do not let you see, hear, and formulate your own modern opinion. They often overlook that the musical instrument companies coming out of World War II were in complete disarray. Their equipment had been retooled for the war effort, and then it needed unretooling. Supply sources all had to be renewed. Staff had been retrained for the war effort, and then they had to be unretrained for the drum effort. And if they weren't there, they needed to be hired, and they had to train them from scratch. So it was kind of a mess, you know, those years just prior to the introduction of the Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension drums. They came from an estate. Before this, they belonged to the original professional drummer. And they've never been set up until this week for the video and for the listing. Correction, I wasn't going to make a video of these drums, but I've been researching them for 25 years, and there's very little information. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. You can Google online, you can find pictures and pieces of paper and partial drum sets and yada yada, but unfortunately, you don't see the drums in action. On top of that, new demands were being placed on drum equipment. For example, in 1952, one of the big hits was "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window?" Didn't really require a lot of bass drum work on that, and the equipment was quite primitive. So the new doo-wop era and the introduction of the rock and roll era created new demands for drum equipment. They were produced between 1951 and 1954. I'm not going to get into the details. I think the production line ended in 53. It was a Leedy and Ludwig joint venture. Another long story, but if you're interested, you can find all this information online. And during the course of this making this listing, I decided to show it to people because for some reason, no one has ever shown you the inside and outs of these drums. And even though I haven't played drums personally in nearly 30 years, I also felt it was important to show you that the set is playable and that they really are a valuable asset in the history of drum making, especially North American and the United States history of modernizing the drum set. So here it is, and I hope you liked the video. Again, it was spontaneous, unscripted, thrown together. Call it what you will, but maybe it'll give people insight, and maybe it'll break a few of the myths and mysteries, because these are truly wonderful drums. This particular set has calfskins on all of it, batter sides and resonator, except for the snare drum. And that kind of makes sense, considering that the drums are over 70 years old. But the original calfskins are still on the tom-tom, the batter, the floor tom batter, the bass drum batter, and resonator side. The only heads that have been replaced with calfskin heads from the 50s are the resonator sides of the tom-tom and the floor tom. Anyway, enjoy the video. Let me know in the comments if it was of value to you. Thanks very much. Audiences needed to hear what was going on in the back of the stage. Drums needed strong redevelopment, requiring huge investments from manufacturers who really didn't have the money to do it at that time because of decades of interruptions and losses in production. I can't help wonder if the last two circumstances contributed to the discontinued development of knob tension drums, and not simply that they were an Edsel. Flawed, I agree, but we all start out as children. What if Leedy Ludwig had enjoyed a great partnership? What if they had time to improve the design for more than just a couple of years? It's ironic the first mylar drumhead was designed in 1953 when Sonny Greer was a Leedy endorser and also a knob tension set player. If development continued, possibly the aluminum bearing edge on the knob tension set might have been upgraded into stainless steel. Maybe the tuning system might have been modified for mylar. We'll never know. And then again, Remo may have been deprived of his later invention, the rototom. By the way, all of the parts on my drum set that I'm about to show you, function just fine. The bearing edges go up and down just like they should. All of the tension controls and internal mechanisms, they work just like new. So there's been a lot said about the drums. Maybe they didn't get quite the chance they needed to really shine. But anyway, I'm not saying they're a great invention by today's standards, but considering they came out 73 years ago off a design table, they're pretty amazing. The knobs control aluminum tensioning arms inside the drum, and you can see there's quite a bit of mechanics inside there. There's a lot of differences about these drums. There's also extra re-rings inside the drums. Sorry that there's no professional production in this video. It was filmed at the last minute. I was just fixing my drums up or getting them ready to sell. They'd never been set up since the 90s, never been played, and I just wanted to check them over. They're in remarkably good condition. But I, wanted to get them out and set them up. I thought, well, why not share that with you? Because I really haven't seen too many examples of a working set of the 1951 Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension drum set. I'm getting this drum set ready. I've owned this drum set for a very long time. I'm getting it ready to sell, and it's such a unique set. And all of us have read about the Leedy Ludwig Knob Tensions from the early 50s. There's so much stuff you can read and see online, but I thought I'd take this opportunity to give you a little experience into what the drums are really like visually and audibly. And this set has been in storage since the early 1990s, long time, and it's not a set that I ever purchased to use. But there is a dampening device inside the bass drum, and I have to take that out to sell it. And I was known for using carpet underlay for dampening bass drums, and so I believe that's what's in here. There's only a breather hole to look through, so I thought, well, I'm going to take the front head off. I'll let you have a look inside a Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension bass drum and see what you think. I want to take these spurs off, make it a little bit easier, and these drums have calf heads on them. That's why you'll see a temperature gauge in here, because I want to make sure this is, we're getting near summer, and I don't want to let these drums get overheated. Now, like I say, these haven't been off. These haven't been off since the early 90s. So this little bolt here, wing bolt or knob, knurled knob, all it's doing is it's holding the rim. This is the actual counter hoop right here. This is all one piece, and we have to be really careful taking this off, because this is original WMP white marine pearl Leedy Ludwig, and it's very easy to damage this. These are a little bit oversized. This is a 22-inch bass drum, but it actually measures about 23 and some because of the mechanics inside. You'll see when I get it open. So I'm not going to let you view the whole thing. I'm going to edit out this, but I have to take off these in order to remove the head. And actually, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the tension, because there is a little bit of tension. These have been stored detuned, but it's getting a little warm. It's 77 degrees in here. So it'll make it a lot easier if I relax the tensioning system on the calfskin. And that's what I'm doing here. So again, all I'm going to do now is remove all of these counter hoop screws. I'm actually going to keep them in order so that they all go back into the same space. I'm going to make notes on any deficiencies I may find along the way, and just do an overall inspection. So here we have the calfskin head, likely the original, Leedy and Ludwig, super hard white, superior hard white. It's a little faint on the front. Some sort of a stain here from the previous drummer. Like I said, these were from an estate, so I'm in effect the second owner of these. Obviously, it was a pro, and we'll see a little bit more of that later on. The sticker on the front here, hopefully you can see that. I don't have the lights too powerful right now. Don't know what that was. That was him. Now, before we get into the inside of the drum, you can see the craftsmanship that's gone into this. It's amazing. They were, hopefully you can see that, and I don't have too much of a flash burnout on there, but the folks at the Leedy Ludwig factory in the early 50s, they knew how to tuck a head. I mean, this is absolutely awesome how they tucked that head. Look at that. And we're looking at it nearly 70 years later. Actually, I guess it's over 70 now. Look at the condition of that head. Now, it's quite a tight fit for those of you that haven't had any experience with the knob tension drums. This is quite a tight fit. And my recommendation is don't mess with it. You know, I have a Paul Jameson snare drum that he built, and on the telephone a couple of years ago, I was talking to him about it, and he said, whatever you do, don't take the tension lugs off. So I think it's sort of the same idea with these. You don't really want to mess with them unless you have to. Now, inside, I'm going to bring the drum a little closer to the camera. Inside, you can see the mechanics. These are all individual tensioners, and each one of these is attached to the actual counter bearing edge. So this piece of metal here becomes the bearing edge for the calfskin head. And you can see that on the head itself. You can see the black from the aluminum bearing edge. Now, it's quite dusty in here. We'll get to that later. The drum head itself has 4 re-rings, or the shell, I mean, has 4 re-rings, and the serial number, I don't know if I can bring that up to the camera without getting too much flash, but if you can see that in the camera, the serial number there is 5012 on this bass drum. This is all original. There's no refinishing, no modifications, no holes drilled, no hardware added. There's a little bit of a crack here in the shell, and that's about it. This would be the rail mount tom holder bracket, breather hole, so there you have the inside, and you can see the original batter head on there as well. Now you notice that head's under tension. Like you say, it's 77 degrees in here, and it's not a good idea to leave these drums under tension. They've always been detuned, but I've just taken them out of storage recently, and I'll show you how this works if you can see it. Oh, the original owner did have dampening in there. Check this out. And ironically, he used carpet underlay, he or she. Speculating that's a he, which is what I've used. You know, I've used carpet underlay since 1981. because you can control how much dampening you want by how many layers you have. Now, on a regular bass drum, what I would do is I would cut this to the inside width of the shell and fit it in as much as I needed between the two regular bass drum spurs that would be in the shell, but you wouldn't have all this. So I don't know why this was in there with all of this mechanical equipment in there, but that's what was in the bass drum from the original owner. So anyway, back to the tensioning system. So these heads need to be relaxed, and this is how you do it. These knobs here are really beautiful, well made, heavy duty. They feel like the highest quality steel. You know, they just feel absolutely beautiful. I'm not sure if this component here is steel or if it's brass. I'll have to get a magnet. So anyway, as you can see, when you turn these arms go this way, and the bearing edge goes that way. So the head lowers in tension. When I turn it the opposite way, clockwise, these straighten out, and the bearing edge pushes forward. This was a fantastic idea. It was a disastrous marketing invention, but you have to remember that they were using calfskin heads that were subjected to humidity and temperature. So if Remo Belli had his mylar skins on these heads on these drums in 1951, you know, we might still see a similar component to this. And I'll show you. We'll get into more of that. You non-believers, once I get this drum set back together, I'll let you hear it, and I'll show you how these work. And you might not be as negative. I mean, it's fascinating how this set works. But anyway, when I put it back together, I don't want any tension on this head. Now, when you do put a head on, this head is seated, and that's why I'm keeping it on the counter hoop in the exact same position so that it goes back on the bearing edge in the exact same position. The head has been seated. I put a new head, move this out of the way, on this rack tom. There's the original Leedy Ludwig head, but there was no head on the bottom, and I couldn't get a Leedy Ludwig, so I put a Slingerland head on here. And in order to install a different head, it might be different for some of you other drum technicians out there, but I dampen the head, moisten it a little bit. I take a little bit of regular water and dip a sponge in it just to get the sponge a little bit damp, and then I dampen the head and put it on, and then give it a tiny bit of tension so that the head itself will seat itself to the bearing edge. That's the way I've always done it. So there you have it. Now I'm going to turn the camera off so that I can dust this out. I want to clean out the inside, and then I'll put the front head back on. I put back all these retainers, these small thumb screws or wheel screws, wheel bolts, whatever you want to call them. Their only purpose is to hold the counter hoop into the shell, and the maple in the shell has a threaded steel retaining nut embedded into the wood in the maple, and it's expertly done. It's a remarkable craftsmanship. So anyway, this is just sitting here now, no tension whatsoever. So now, just like you'd tune any drum, I'm going to go across the drum. What do we have here? 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 knob tensionings on each head for the bass drum. So I'm just going to bring it up until I feel a little bit of resistance, just like well, this is normally how I tune any drum, with a drum key on a tension rod. Starting to get a little bit there. Again, we're looking at about 77 degrees in here, so I'm just going to do this for all intents and purposes for the camera, and then I'm going to relax it afterwards. Round and round we go. And the batter side isn't tensioned at all, so I'm just going to bring this up to a resonant level, and then do the same thing on the batter side. Sorry if I'm blocking the camera view. This was totally a spontaneous idea. Hopefully some of you out there who are interested in vintage drums and unique inventions will appreciate this, get something out of this. You know, I've been fortunate. I worked for Ray Ayotte when he invented the tune lock tension system, and so I saw that development from the beginning to the end of tune lock for the Ayotte custom drum line. And tensioning has always been an issue for drummers. Okay, so now I'm starting to get a little bit of resonance happening here. I'm not going to worry about tuning this acoustically. There's a little bit of a wrinkle here. I'm not sure why. That could have something to do with the way it's sitting on the bearing edge. I'm going to loosen these off a little bit and try to rebalance it. Now, I'm retired now. When I was an active drum tech, you know, I had a way to tune a drum without actually hitting it, because when you're tuning drum sets for festival stages, you know, you'll have an act. The act will be out there performing in front of 30,000 people, and you're setting up the next act behind the backdrop. You can't be, you know, diddling away like that. So I've always used a palm pressure on the head to bring it up to a level that I know is workable. And the other thing about seating heads is, you know, you want to put a little pressure on it if it's bindi tuned, so that it has a chance to mate with the bearing edge. Personally, if I had invented this system, I wouldn't have called it knob tension. That's a phrase that makes us older guys nervous. So, anyway, I just had to throw that in while I was doing this. You can see this is the original batter head. Hopefully I haven't got the lights too bright. Leedy and Ludwig, there you go, superior hard white. And there's the area, no impact pad, you know, at all. It's amazing this head survived. You can see there was something attached to it. There's a little bit of residual adhesive here. But it doesn't look to me like there was really much of an impact pad on here. He must have had one of those big fuzzy beaters. Unfortunately, I have a pedal, for this kit, but it didn't have a beater. I'm assuming it was probably one of those vintage big fuzzy guys. You want to go, but I'd say the best way is this, a tactile palm pressure method. A little more. Oh, there you go. Hear that? I don't know if you can hear that. Again, I'm not in my proper recording environment, so I'm using an old camera to record this, so I'm not quite sure how the audio is going to be. But it's starting to ring into pitch. There you go, hear that? Considering how many rivets and, and screws and nuts and bolts and moving parts are in here, I can't hear anything rattling except for the skin itself. Knob tension. New. Well, now you know. This, it's as the original owner had it, and he's done some repairs to the drum. My basic instinct tells me that he really liked this drum because it's the most well-used drum in the set. There is some damage to the drum. I'll just rotate it so that you can see. There's the feather touch strainer. Now he has replaced the tightening mechanism with a screw. Could be the original nut. I'm not sure what was here. I'll have to look that up. He's also inserted a cotter pin where the axle was that releases the snares. And from my knowledge, the axle was the same as this top riveted pin. Kind of not really riveted, but mushroomed at both ends. In other words, it wasn't meant to be removed. And so he's ingeniously put a cotter pin in here. I'm not actually going to change that. Why? It functions just fine, and you could put, if you wanted, you could put a threaded bolt in there with a nut, but I'm just going to leave it the way it is. He's done the same thing on the other side. He's got a cotter pin where the axle was.
So here's what happened. The guy buys this drum set, I think they're $500 US, which is the equivalent of $6,000 in today's Canadian cashola. And he finds out that he has to have a specified snare strainer. He can't just go out and buy a $5.99 snappy snare. He's got to have the super extended, super sensitive Leedy Ludwig, which really preempted the whole series of super sensitive snares from Ludwig. But he had to have his own special thing. And there it is there, you know, it's something that can't be had when you're playing in Watson, Saskatchewan. So here's what he did. Here's what happened. He found a way to modify the snare drum with some jeans, some swinging blue jean material, and a snappy snare. But there was a problem. You see the collar there on the upper left corner of the picture. The collar is very, very deep. I don't know if that's because this is an old Remo resonator head that's stretched an inch, because current heads really are about half an inch in depth.
Very old Weather King Ambassador snare side on this, and it has a more contemporary Remo Ambassador batter on the batter side. So what I was going to show you was that if you look underneath, where was that? Yeah, underneath the butt end of the snare strainer, you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that, there's a little bit of white marine pearl covering material sticking out over top of the counter hoop. And that's because these are really tight. You know, they made this white marine pearl very thin so that the counter hoop would fit around it and still be able to use a 14-inch drum skin. And so when the counter hoops came on and off, it was very common to have it catch on the on that white marine pearl. And so underneath the counter hoops, I've noticed on photographs of other knob tension drum sets, the same thing. Underneath the counter hoop, there can be quite a lot of chipping to the white marine pearl. So anyway, we'll get back into this. There's no difference in the tuning mechanisms on this drum compared to the other three drums in the set, except for one thing. On the rotary tightening mechanisms, you'll notice this one is smooth like all of the other drums, and this one has a bump on it. And that's because this controls the tension of the top head. And that's so that if you're playing on stage and you're in the dark and you can't really see very well, you can feel, if you want to change your tension, you can, by touch, feel which head you're tightening or loosening. And so all the way around the drum, there's a little knob on the top of the batter side tuning mechanisms. So all I'm going to do is put some tension on both heads. You can see, oh yeah, you can see internal tone control. And it has a little bit of a different knob again, possibly for the same reason. Similar circular knob, but doesn't have any knurling around the edge for the tone control. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so once again, the resonator heads are smooth, no bump. So let's give them some pressure. I'm not going to worry about, I don't want to take too long here, so let's just see how this functions. Doing its job. Now this one's bottomed out, and that is probably because so let's just get it rough. Same thing on the top. Where's that? There we go. Okay, so again we want to go with the knobbed, the knobs with the bumps. For curiosity's sake, we've got 2, 4, 6. So there's only 6 tension controls for the top and 6 for the bottom. Now, was this fun on stage? I don't think so. I think on stage this would have been a lot more difficult than using a drum key and doing it visually from the top. again, I'm using an old-fashioned Nikon camera to film this with. So there's I don't have any control over the sound, and it has auto-limiting, I believe, in the recording function in those cameras. So you might get, this might not sound the greatest, but I'll do my best to let you see how it's turning out. That off. That's about where we're at. We're at about medium-low as far as snare drums go. Would have been nice if this had calf heads on it. You know, considering the resonating head is made out of aluminum, or the the bearing edge is made out of aluminum, really has a lot of tone and warmth. Now, as far as the snares go, I think they need to be adjusted before I can get them to function properly. They're connecting and releasing, but the denim that the previous owner has used on here obviously is really stretched out, and the tensioning here, which I need a wrench for, I think it's maxed out for tightness. So that's gonna, that'll take a little bit of fiddling with, which I won't bother to do in this video. But that gives you a pretty clear idea of the snare, how it works. Again, it has these retainer bolts for the bearing edge to hold counter hoop, to hold the counter hoop to the maple shell. That's what these are for. And then it has the smooth knurled nut for the tuning mechanism that tensions the bottom head. And it has the dimpled, not really dimpled, more of a, what do you call that? I don't know, a bump on this one, so you can tell on stage that you're tuning the top head and your featherlight snare strainer mechanism. So it's fairly straightforward. Oh, on the inside, this is kind of a common thing here. Near the serial number, you can see it quite a bit. Now, hopefully, we'll try to get the lights shining properly. So the serial number on this drum is 5011. I believe that's a very early production model. And you can see the reinforcement ring has a slight separation. It's nothing serious, but from about where my finger is, all the way past the serial number, or the date code, to about here, there's a slight separation in the reinforcement ring inside the drum. And apparently that's fairly common on these drums. I don't think it's anything serious on this particular drum.
And have a look at the other two drums in the set, as well as check out the hardware that was used on this video. First, the floor tom, which shows the most aging of all four drums. You can see it was probably one of the first ones built by Leedy and Ludwig. It has two white marine pearl panels, and you can see the glue is given up and separating a little bit there, but the edges are in excellent condition. These drums were kept in cases the entire time in storage, which prevented any snags or cracks or chips from happening to the seams on this floor tom. Now, this next video is a circular video. You'll be able to take a closer look at the receiving edge where the counter hoop connects with the shell. And you can see those, there's a brass insert hole there for the retaining nut. There's another one there. You can see the lifted edge there. The Leedy Ludwig floor tom legs are all intact on this kit. And you can also see the two tension or tone controls that are mounted, internal tone controls inside the kit, which are in excellent condition. Now, it's very common on these drums to develop chips on the top. And you can see there's one hiding behind that floor tom leg. And it's because the drummer, when he would take the heads off or the counter hoop off, it was a very tight fit to fit them back. And so oftentimes, especially if he was in a rush at a gig or something, there would be a snag. The counter hoop would snag. There's a big one right there on the outside of the white marine pearl. And a restorer would have to take a chip or a piece off of another drum and glue it in there. Now here we're looking at the inside rotation of the floor tom, and you can see it's very similar, if not identical, to the bass drum. It has the 4 reinforcement rings inside attached to the maple shell. Same type tensioners, but on the floor tom there are 6 tensioners on each side of the drum versus 8 on the bass drum. Can't remember the name of those tone controls, but they work extremely well. Moving on to the 13-inch tom now. There's no videos on this drum, didn't want to get too repetitive, but there's some stills here. It's a very, very pretty drum. I just got to look at the streamlined appearance of that 73-year-old beauty, eh? Flip side view. Tom holder assembly is attached. Fits in the case that way, so I think that's the safest way to store the unit. Here's a brighter look at that. It's quite an assembly. Love the craftsmanship going into that. Look at all the round corners. Here we have a look at the first look at the inside of the drum. Now there's only one thing that I would say is deficient about this, and that's that the felt on the internal tone control on the Resonator side is missing. You can see that felt there is missing. So the drum has been tagged on the outside, so we're not going to replace that felt. We're just going to leave it original the way it is, but we have tagged it so that nobody will use that accidentally. There's the counter hoop edge. And we're finally on to the hardware. Some of it's original and some isn't. I find it really hard to photograph drum hardware. It's so vertical and photography tends to be so horizontal. But anyway, this is just a group shot of everything that's there, and I've got 3 photographs. I'll just talk about still photographs and talk about each individual item from the left to the right. So on the left we have the 3 original Leedy Ludwig floor tom legs as they came with the kit. Notice they don't have a kink in the bottom of them, they're just straight up and down and knurled. Beside that is the WFL tone control for the bass drum that was an option. It wasn't included in the original drum set, and neither were the WFL spurs, the giant spurs you'll see beside it. Those are fully adjustable, and they were also an option. The L-arm cymbal holder there is bent at the top. I'm not sure if that's an original bend or if that's customer installed, but that's the one I had that I used with the kit. I only had one, although the bass drum had 2 receiving brackets for cymbal holders. Then we have lying down is a Gretsch Bigfoot hi-hat stand from, I think it's from the early 1960s. It was a Cadillac of hi-hat stands. And I know it says Gretsch on the foot pedal. You'll see it on the next picture, but I believe that stand was made by Wahlberg and Age. And the snare stand beside it is a Marvel. And in the catalog for the Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension, it indicates it comes with a Broadway snare stand. And I don't know if there's any difference between the Marvel and the Broadway. So this could have been a replacement, or it could have been original with the kit. I have no way of knowing that. The rubber tips are quite worn off because they become brittle with age. Now, on this particular photograph, the red circles indicate the D-shaped recess in the chrome, in the hardware. And that indicates that these items were made by Wahlberg and Age. According to them, any drum hardware, I'm not sure if this is true, this is hearsay, but according to Wahlberg and Age, anything that has that dimple in the bottom, the D-shaped dimple, was made by Wahlberg and Age. Well, I don't know about you, but I could really use a breather. This video has been a plethora of Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension, so let's wrap this all up. One last look at the kit, and let's play.
So this video, it was just filmed with 2 old Nikon Coolpix cameras. And that said, you can see them and hear them for yourself. Maybe then you can make up your own mind. Did Leedy Ludwig Knob Tension drums receive a justifiable and deserving demise? Or were they sadly orphaned in their infancy? And if you want an even closer look, you have an opportunity to purchase this set. And the listing information will be in the notes below in the description area. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I hope it helps you understand what went on there at the Leedy Ludwig Drum Factory back in 1951. Thanks for watching.
Hey Frank, I'm soon to be 70, and I've got a bad case of knob tension. Maybe it's time we turned it over to somebody else. What do you think? Cat got your tongue? Okay, well, before we're done, let's have a quick look at the snare. So the first thing we're going to do with the snare is we're going to take this drum key and tune it up.